Thousands of years ago, in 2010, the Belgian federal election sped up a process that was actually in the making for quite a few decades prior to that. The parties with the greatest gains were respectively the Flemish nationalists of the new Flemish Alliance in the Dutch-speaking north of the country and the Socialist Party in the French-speaking south of the country. The parliamentary system means that the government is mostly formed by whichever parties can coalesce a majority of seats in parliament. Democratic validity comes from the fact that the majority of the population is represented in whichever coalition of parties has a majority in government. Unlike in presidential systems, there is rarely an outright winner in parliamentary democracies. So in 2010, amid the Great Recession, Belgium broke the record for time without government. Political parties failed to form a government for over 18 months. We were rewarded for the efforts, actually, by Guinness World Record book. The previous record holders were Iraq, for understandable reasons. There are a few angles from which to look at the current situation, and many political scientists have done a good job doing that. But I want to focus on an idea that's been floated by the new Flemish Alliance and how aspects of that proposal actually already exist in the Belgian political system and have contributed to the Quagmire. So, short look at Belgian federalism, all right? A critical mistake in Belgian federalism is the absence of a legal hierarchy. The Belgian political class created a federalism without hierarchy. In most other countries composed of member states, laws on the national level override those on the subnational level. This is normally not much of a problem because it is mostly very clear what each level is supposed to do. And if there are any overlaps, then the de facto or the default rule is that federal law is supreme. That's also how it works in the EU. This is to reduce any legal uncertainty. And that's how every single federated country in the world works, really. Even the extremely decentralized Switzerland, which is one of the most textbook examples of a federal system that exists. Disputes are then usually resolved through unanimous decisions in meetings with the two member states and the Brussels capital region and the federal government. So in the case of Belgium, due to the lack of a legal hierarchy, decisions that arise as a result of conflicting laws have to be resolved with four parties at the table: two member states, the capital region, and the federal government. The problems in the governance of Belgium have become apparent to most of the ruling class for quite some time now. That's even though their very decisions created the situation. The Flemish nationalists of the new Flemish Alliance maintain that the country's gridlock results from there being two parallel democracies in which elections yield very different results. Left-wing in the south and right-wing in the north. The solution, therefore, is confederalism, to devolve all powers to the member states and through international treaty decide what you still want to do together. There would be no directly elected parliament, but an assembly composed of delegates from the two member state parliaments. In my evaluation, though, the Belgian media has not done a good job at explaining to the population what confederalism really means, outside of the scenario put forth by the Nationalist Party. On the scale of a relatively small, densely populated country like Belgium, there are many policy areas which are very intensely intertwined with other parts of the country. Take transportation and environment. Two very linked domains. Every region has a transport minister. and a plethora of ministers whose authorities touch upon environmental policy in one way or another. Despite the most ecstatic wet dreams of would-be efficiency, anyone who's ever worked in an organization with different departments and cross-departmental operations knows that the more people share responsibility over a single matter, the harder it is to coordinate. Now, add to that physical distance, a dash of language difference, a serving of political electoral calculation, and you've created an impressive shit souffle ready to serve up to an already bewildered population. And then claim it's the only way to make it. The more dysfunctional an entity, the more receptive people become, though, to the idea of stuff it, just end it already. In other words, death by calculated dysfunction. Research by Belgian political scientists like Dave Sinardet and others demonstrates that the differences between the Dutch and French-speaking parts of the country are really not that great at all. In fact, they're almost non-existent. Political scientists don't actually define Belgium as a democracy, but as a partocracy. Political parties deeply control the government beyond any imagination possible for citizens of countries like the US, the UK, or France. The visions or lack thereof of their leadership, of the leadership of the political parties, easily creates decisions that have led to Belgium's current political waffling. Belgians deserve better than the malgovernance perpetrated upon them by the stranglehold of visionless party leaders over public discourse and the consciences of their party members and members of parliament.